Glenlivet Scotch Whiskey is a proud sponsor of the Moth Podcast. At the Glenlivet, they're firm believers that life is better when there's more inclusivity in it, that there's room at the bar for everyone. That's why they want you to enjoy their single malt the way you want. Neat, with soda, or with your cat. Their founder, George Smith, didn't distill his single malt with rules around it. He intentionally distilled his scotch for everyone to enjoy how they want it. Enjoy responsibly. 2019, the Glenlivet Distilling Company, New York, New York. This content is intended for individuals 21 years of age or older. Hey there, before we get started today, we have a favor to ask you. The Moth is conducting our annual audience survey so we can learn a bit more about you, and we'd really value your feedback. We're hoping you'll take just a few minutes to tell us a bit about yourself and share your thoughts about the show. Please visit surveynerds.com/themoth to take the survey today. That's surveynerds.com/themoth.
Welcome to the Moth Podcast. I'm your host this week, R. Eric Thomas. The sound studio in our office is under construction at the moment, so right now we're coming to you from the Sundance TV podcast studio at the Sundance Film Festival. This is a special Black History Month episode, and we have two stories for you. You may recognize my voice from October 2018 Squeaky Wheels episode of the Moth Podcast. I told a story about writing an editorial about Black History Month that accidentally went super viral. If you missed it, you can find it on themoth.org. I've also had the pleasure of hearing hundreds, if not thousands, of Moth stories as the host of the Story Slams in DC and Philadelphia, many of which, like today's stories, are about identity and race. First up, we have Emily Richmond. Here's Emily at a Moth Story Slam in New Orleans.
I was very smart when I was very young. And on the first day of fourth grade, my teacher brought us all together and said we were going to take spelling tests all day, just sort of round robin until you got a spelling word wrong, and then we'd know what level you were at. And I was the only kid in my class that got no words wrong. And because I went to a less than mediocre public school, instead of giving me like 10th grade words or like 12th grade words, they were just like, you don't have to spell the rest of the year. You've done it. Fourth grade, you've mastered it. So needless to say, I was like feeling myself that day. And my teacher came around a little bit later and was like, we're going to do just like a little survey that the school is having us fill out. Got my pen ready, was ready to ace this thing. And the first thing I see on the sheet, which is like, if you look like me, the last thing you want to see on a sheet of paper, which is like, please choose your race, select only one. And I am stumped. And I'm sitting there and I feel sick. And I call my teacher over because I can't answer this question. And she does like the very lovely canned answer and says like, just choose whatever feels best, which is not helpful because I don't know if that's all, none, any. So she leaves and I sit and I decide I'm going to approach this survey and read the questions first and see if I can like infer which race I should pick based on what the rest of the survey is asking. And it wants to know how many books I read. It wants to know how many hours I spend doing homework, how much junk food I eat. And it's fourth grade. I can't like connect these things back to race in any way. And so I'm like surveying the room, trying to find an answer. And to my left is my friend Ashley, and she's Asian. And we read the same books and we eat the same food and we drink the same drinks and watch the same shows. And I look to my right, and on my right is my friend Ashley, who is white and she's blonde, and she and I read and eat and drink all the same things. And I look over my shoulder, and behind me is my friend Ashley, and she's brunette and she's not white, but she's also not brown. Something's definitely mixed in there. But for the purposes of my hometown, she's white, and we're all sort of the same person, and I can't figure it out. So I fill out the survey just as it is, give all truthful answers, and I can't figure out the race thing. My teacher finally comes over and says sort of like, we got to wrap it up. You got to just like choose one. And so I answer it truthfully. And I feel like if I can't answer black, because that feels like a lie. I don't want to deny I can't deny my parent. I can't choose white. That feels like a lie. It kind of doesn't matter what I choose. So I just fill in a circle and I send it off and I wait anxiously for someone to come in and say, you ruined the study, you failed it, you lied, your race was wrong. And nobody comes in. And my teacher doesn't scold me, and nothing happens. And so then the next time a survey comes along, I try my luck again. I pick another race. I lie about how many books I read, and I send that survey off, and nobody comes in, nobody scolds me, and I realize it doesn't fucking matter. And so as I get a little bit older, and my hometown is like very white and kind of racist for being in New England, and I'm starting to understand how the world works, and I'm starting to resent these surveys because I feel like they're playing into some weird stereotypes that are coming back at me as one of the only brown people in my town. As those surveys start coming in, I start like pouring my like anger into these surveys, and I'm just like, you know what, I think I know what you want me to say. So today I'm black, and I only read books, and I never watch TV, and I don't eat junk food because fuck you. And then the next time I get a survey, I say that I'm white, and all I do is eat junk food, and I smoke 12 packs of cigarettes a day, and I stare at the ceiling, and I hang out with boys, and I drink. That's all I do. Fuck you. That's fuck you on these surveys. And so then as I get a little bit older and a little older, my dad sort of notices me and says to me, "You are the most proud mixed person I have ever met in my life." And I tell him it's true. I'm very excited to be black. I'm very excited to be white. I love being mixed. It's one occasion where 1 and 1 makes 3. But I realized that as much as I hate checking those boxes, and I still do, even on that little release, even though we can check as many as apply, which is lovely. I don't like checking the boxes, but having to face that box over and over and over again really helped me to think outside of it.
That was Emily Richmond. Emily is a writer based in New Orleans, Louisiana. You can find her monthly at the Moth Story Slam or telling jokes and stories into microphones at other shows around the NOLA area. Up next, we have Maxie Jones with a story that takes place in Harlem, New York, the night of the 2008 election. Here's Maxie.
My father, Maxie Jones Sr., came to Harlem in the 1950s from Prentiss, Mississippi. Now I remember one time when he took me down there for a visit, we were driving down the main street in Prentiss, and up ahead we saw at the traffic light, the Ku Klux Klan were handing out flyers to the drivers. They were handing the flyers only to the white drivers. They were in full KKK garb. They had the hoods, the gowns, everything. As we drew closer to them, the better you could see their eyes rolling around in those little holes in the hoods. I had only seen them on TV prior to that. It's a lot different in person. They gave a flyer to the driver in front of us, said, "Here you go, ma'am, white power." Then they looked at us, and I was scared because I was wondering what they were going to say to us. But they didn't say anything. They just walked right past, went to the car behind us, and said, "Here you go, sir, white power." And as we drove off, I asked my father, I said, "Dad, how could they do that in broad daylight just like that, right in front of us?" My father said, "Maxie, just sit still and keep quiet." And I felt that he should be angry like I was angry. But for him, it was just normal. My father never talked about politics to me. And I don't even know if he ever voted. The only thing he ever said to me about politics was, "Shit." Because that's how he started off everything. He said, "Shit. It don't matter who the president is. They ain't going to do nothing for us no way." And I understood why he felt that way, because he grew up in the world where, in politics, black folks just didn't matter. When I was a kid, my mother used to tell me, "Maxie, you could be anything you want to be." She said, "Shoot, you could be the president of the United States if you want to." And I never really believed it. I thought that what she was really saying was, you could try to be the president, and you'll land somewhere. When I was about 10 years old, I remember when Nixon beat McGovern in the presidential election by what seemed like just a few votes. And the next day, my social studies teacher came in and she said, "I can't believe he won. I just can't believe it. If more people had come out to vote, he wouldn't have won that election." And it was from her that I learned that people don't show up to vote just to put someone into office. You show up to vote also to keep somebody out. The year I turned 18 just happened to be an election year. And I voted that year because I was excited, even though my candidate didn't win. And ever since then, I've never missed an opportunity. In 2007, my father passed away. And right about that time, I started hearing about this senator from Illinois named Barack Obama, who threw his hat in the ring for the presidency. Now, my first thought was that was one of those situations where I know I'm not going to win, but at least we can get people used to the idea of a black man being president. Now, I know what my father would say. He would go, "Shit, you ain't going to see no black president in your lifetime." And based on that, I thought, ain't no way this guy's going to win. On election day of 2008, I had to be to work at 8 o'clock that morning. And I heard the polls opened up at 6 o'clock. So I got up early so I could be the first one down there. It was at Gladys Hampton Houses right there on St. Nicholas Avenue. So I got up and I went there, and I was shocked to find the place was crowded already. People had been lined up from early to vote. And it's not like any other election where you're just standing in line waiting to vote. People were celebrating, and everybody was talking like they knew each other. One guy had his kids with him. He was like, "I brought my kids for this historic moment." And there was this other lady who said, "This is one time I made sure to get out to vote." But for me, it was just business. The reason I was voting was to make sure that if Barack Obama didn't win, it wasn't going to be because I didn't vote. It took me about an hour and 15 minutes, and then I was on my way to work. And I called my friend Cheryl because it was her birthday. And when I called her, she said, "Maxie, guess what? I just had the best birthday gift ever." I said, "What is that?" She says, "I just voted for a black man for the presidency on my birthday." And I said, "Well, good." Then when I hung up the phone, I said, "Well, at least she got to vote for him." Then I went to work, and while I was at work, all my coworkers were talking about making sure they got out to vote, and people were actually asking for time off so that they could make sure that they had time to vote before they going home. And everywhere I turned, people were talking about voting. And after a while, I actually started to feel some hope. I said, maybe this guy Obama could win this election. So when I got home that evening, the first thing I did was turn on my TV. And I looked and I was like, "Oh, shoot, this dude is winning." So I stayed glued to my set after that. Now, normally, whenever I vote, I just wait till the next morning to find out what the results are. But this time, I wanted to know right away. So I called my friend Martin, and I said, "Martin, when do we find out who won the election?" He laughed at me and said, "Dude, 11 o'clock. So I said, "All right." I was sitting and watching, and then I dozed off to sleep. And I woke up to chants of, "Yes, we can! Yes, we can!" And I was looking at the TV, and they were showing this huge crowd in Washington, D.C. Then they showed this huge crowd in Chicago, Illinois. And then they showed this huge crowd in Harlem. And I was like, "Harlem? I ain't seen no crowd in Harlem. Where's that crowd?" Now, 2 doors from my apartment, there was a Barack Obama campaign office. So I said, "Well, maybe they're out there." So I decided to go outside and see. Now, by this time, I had on a pair of sweats that I only wear to bed. But I figured no one's going to notice. So I just threw on the leather jacket and went outside. When I got outside, there was nobody there. So I said, well, nobody's here. Maybe they're on 125th Street. So I started walking down to 125th Street. When I got to 125th Street, I looked west. I saw nothing. Then I looked east towards 7th Avenue, and I saw these bright lights and this huge crowd. So I said, I wonder if that's the crowd on TV. So I went over there to see. And as I approached 7th Avenue, there was this huge stage set up right there on the corner of 125th Street and 7th Avenue. And celebrities were on the stage talking to the crowd, and they had the crowd chanting, "Yes, we can! Yes, we can!" And when I got there, I saw this huge Jumbotron set up, and it was showing up-to-the-minute coverage of the election. And every time it showed Barack winning in another state, the crowd cheered, "Yes, we can! Yes, we can!" The police were trying to keep the traffic moving on 125th Street, but it was almost impossible because people were jumping out of their cars, screaming, "Obama!" I saw one of my neighbors, Lisa, and I went over to say hi, and she just started crying. She said, "I can't believe this. I can't believe it." And I said, "What?" She said, "A black man is about to be president of the United States." And the moment she said that, the crowd just erupted. And I turned around to see what was going on, and the Jumbotron said, "Barack Obama elected 44th President of the United States." And right then, a total stranger just hugged me, saying, "We did it! We did it! We did it!" And then next thing you know, another stranger hugged me. And we were jumping up and down, going, "We did it! We did it! We did it!" And then suddenly, I thought, we did it. I wonder what my father would think about this. And at that moment, a tear started rolling down my face. I had to step aside outside of the crowd. And I said, "Well, Dad, I'm sorry. It didn't happen in your lifetime. But thank goodness it's happening in mine." Just then, my cell phone rang, and it was my friend Kelly. She said, "Maxie, where you at?" I said, "I'm on 125th Street. Come here, let's have a drink." And she came and met me. And she said, "Okay, where are we going?" And I said, "Let's go to Lennox Lounge." And what better place to be at this moment than the Lennox Lounge? And we started walking to the Lennox Lounge, and we passed by the Lennox Avenue subway station, and people were coming up in droves off the subway onto 125th Street, and they were just hugging people. Everybody was just hugging each other. I must have hugged about 50 more strangers. Then we got to the Lennox Lounge, and as soon as I stepped in the door, a man pushed me in and slammed the door behind me and said, "That's it, we're at capacity." And I felt lucky to be inside. The place was packed. It had young people, old people, black people, white people, rich and poor. Everybody was in there just celebrating, having a great time. People were dressed up in formal wear. And I had on my pajama sweats. And the place was boisterous and people were celebrating. All of a sudden, a hush came over the whole room when Obama came out to make his acceptance speech. And even though I was listening to the speech, I was looking around the room, and everybody was just captivated, hanging on to his every word. And then suddenly he said, "Change has come." The whole room erupted again, and people started celebrating some more. And then when all the celebration was over, I stepped back out onto Lennox Avenue, and people were still all in the streets. Cars were blowing their horn, trying to get through. I turned, and I saw a Dixieland band coming toward me. I said, "Is that a Dixieland band?" Somebody said, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, this is just a dream." So I started walking home across 125th Street. The sun was coming up. A crew was dismantling the stage, taking down a Jumbotron. I stepped into a bodega and picked up the newspaper, tucked it under my arm, and went on home. When I got home, I found I had left my door unlocked. The TV was still on, the lights were still on. And I sat down and I said, did this really just happen? Is a black man really the president of the United States? Was that a Dixieland band? I took the newspaper and went to set it down on the coffee table, and I read the headline for the very first time. And it said, change has come. And I said, yes, it has. Thank you.
Maxie Jones discovered the moth when he moved from New York City to Michigan in 2012. Since then, he has told over 60 stories on moth stages in Detroit, Ann Arbor, and New York. Maxie says he has plenty more stories to tell and doesn't plan on stopping until he's told them all. Thinking back on this particular story, he tells us, quote, many of my fondest memories are of living in Harlem and being so close to all the action, centering around African-American people making history. That's going to do it this time around, but we'll be back again soon with more stories. Until then, have a story-worthy week.
From PRX, this is the Moth Radio Hour. I'm Meg Bowles. Our next storyteller, Savad Johnson, joined the Detroit Fire Department Training Academy when he was 23 years old. He says he immediately felt a sense of purpose and pride in serving the city of Detroit and its citizens. He shared his story at an evening we produced at the Capitol Theater in Flint, Michigan, in partnership with Michigan Public Radio. The theme of the night was Bound and Determined. Here's Savad Johnson, live at the Moth.
I've been a Detroit firefighter for 24 years now. And my brother was a firefighter for 11 years. And we are both second generation because our father served for 20. That is actually a very proud thing for me to say. I've met a lot of great men and women on the job, and through some of the things we've been through and shared, we've grown close, like a family. And I might be biased in saying that I believe Detroit firefighters are some of the best in the world at what we do. But truthfully, we've had a lot of practice. In the mid-'80s and '90s, Detroit was ablaze with arson fires. One year, we exceeded 800 fires in the 3 days and nights before Halloween. This became known as Devil's Night. And I started my career at the tail end of that era. And I can recall many times watching the sun come up after fighting fires throughout the evening. And I gotta tell you, after a night like that, you were sure to find a couple of guys burning rubber out of the station trying to get home, while a couple of guys might have still been asleep in the bed, totally exhausted. All in all, most of my times have been good. A few have been bad, and I've had some wild situations as well. Like about 10 years ago, I was working at the station and it was early in the evening. A few of us were helping to cook out in the kitchen, and a couple of guys were watching something on TV when the alert goes off. It was a box alarm, which means there's a dwelling on fire. Now that normally will send 5 fire trucks and 1 chief to respond. And at my station, we had 2 fire trucks and 1 chief. So we all stopped what we were doing and we ran to our rigs. And as I hopped into the rescue squad, I heard a radio message that there's possibly a person trapped inside. Now that always takes things up a level. So we sped out of the station as fast as we could, trying to be the first ones to get to the scene. The location of this house fire was pretty close to my engine house, and before long, the boss turned and said he could see smoke in the air. An interesting thing happened after that, though. It got really, really quiet in the rig. I mean, you could hear the sirens and the horns blaring, the traffic sped by us and lights flashing and people dodging us to get out the way, but inside, no one was talking. And as we turned onto the block, the boss turned and said, "We got one." Then he grabbed the radio and responded, "Squad 1 to Central. We are on the scene. We have smoke showing in an occupied dwelling. The first engine will be stretching," which is bringing the fire hose. As we pulled up and parked across the street from a 2-story building with lots of black flames and smoke coming out the back, I hopped out with another firefighter to find a man on the front lawn saying that he had made it out the back door, but his mother was still inside. My heart paused. But I sped up the driveway with the other firefighter to the back to see what we had. On the first floor, there was a large room with heavy flames blowing out of every window. And just to the left of it was the back door wide open with thick smoke puffing out of it. Now I knew that's where we were going to go in, so I started to put my air mask on. When the boss got to the back, he notified us that the engine was on the scene, which means we'll be having water soon. But I know that every second counts, and we got to get in there to find this woman. So when the other firefighter is ready, we both tank up, give the boss a thumbs up, and we shoot right in that door through the smoke. I couldn't see much in there, so I'm feeling around blindly, and I'm bumping into some things, but I'm making my way as best as I can. A few moments in, I hear a sound, sort of like glass breaking. All of a sudden, a rush of fire comes into the room, lights up over our head and banks down the walls. I mean, everything is on fire. It got so hot, so fast that it forced me down to my knees. I turned around thinking I could go back out the same way we came in, but that exit was blocked by fire as well. I didn't even see where the other firefighter was that came in behind me. At this point, I knew I was in a bad situation, and I probably had to go through the rest of this house to get out. It got so hot as I sat there. I'm trying to move around and make my way through, and I'm bumping into things, and then my tank gets caught on something. I move back, I move forward, side to side, but I just can't break free. I can't even get my traction. Honestly, I started to get nervous at this point. The flames are going around me and my breathing is getting heavy. My tank is clanging on something, but I can hear voices quite clearly coming from outside saying, "He's still in there. He didn't come out yet. Where's Savad?" And at this point, my nervousness turned into fear because I knew firefighters die in situations like this. They get injured in situations like this. And I didn't want that to be my fate. I thought about a buddy of mine who lost part of his leg when a wall collapsed on him and crushed it. I pictured a video of a fellow firefighter who had to literally chop through the roof of a building because his tank ran out of air and he couldn't find another way to get out. I thought about a brother we had to bury because part of a building collapsed on him and buried him alive on the scene. And I didn't want to die in that fire. Not this way, not today. Then I had another thought popping in my head. I thought about my daughter, Kendall. She was 5 at the time. I pictured her smiling at me with her fat cheeks. I could hear her laughing when I tickled her. I pictured her running to hug me so tightly every time I came home from work. She expected me to come home from work tomorrow, and I expect to go home to work. So I decided to get up, and I lunged forward. I lunged again, trying to get some type of traction, and something broke free. I started crawling through this house feverishly, knocking over things, climbing over stuff, pushing any and everything out of the way, hell-bent on getting out of this house fire. I'm looking through the smoke as I'm making my way, and I see something that looks like what I hope is daylight, flashlight. And as I'm getting through it, I hear voices, first muffled, but then getting louder. And a cool sensation starts to hit my forehead at the edge of my mask. Is this water? Water? It is water. It was water from the fire hose, from the crew making it into the front door. I had made it to the front door where they were. And I was so relieved. I pushed past them and out to the front porch and snatched my mask off to get my air and get my bearings. And while I was there calming myself down, I noticed the guy on the porch, and I asked the firefighter, "Did anyone find the woman yet?" He responded, "No." The guys in the front door had knocked the fire down just enough that it allowed us to get back in. So I picked two guys and we ran back in the front door to find these stairs. And we found the stairs. As I headed up each stair, quickly but deliberately, I had my hands on the walls, feeling. The higher I got on the staircase, the hotter it felt. And by the time we made it to the top of the stairs, this heat was so extreme. The three of us split up quickly to search all the rooms faster. In the first room I stepped into, I patted things down and felt a table or a chair or something. It seemed to be just furniture, so I backed out. When I entered the second room, I bumped into something about knee high. I reached down and felt it. It was sort of spongy, and I thought this might be a bed. So I started to pat it down with two hands. And as I'm going up, I feel something. It's a foot. And then another foot. I quickly pat further up and I feel an arm, a hand, shoulders, a head. This is her. I found her. I knew I had found her. So I scooped under her armpits really quick, pulled her off of the bed and out to the hallway yelling, "I got one! I got one!" Someone came and scooped up her legs and we carried her down the stairs as quickly as we could. We opted not to take her out the front door because the sun was still out front and probably some neighbors. So we took her out the back door and waited. Someone called the EMS crew on the scene and they brought a stretcher to the back. And as we laid her on it, this was my opportunity to take a look at her. She was covered in soot from head to toe. Her gown was dark from the smoke. Her hair was thin. Her arms, her legs were thin. She was just a small, elderly woman, but she was out, and I got her out. I was relieved. We all were. And as they sped off working on her, put her in the ambulance and took off from the scene, I relaxed for just a moment. But that was fleeting as well because we still had a fire to put out. So me and the rest of the guys finished, knocked this fire out in about 45 minutes or so. And then we rode back to the station. On my way back to the station in the squad, I asked the guys with me, "What happened? What did you all see?" It was apparent that I had gotten in a bit further than the other guys. And when that window broke, it caused the flashover that filled that room with fire and pushed the other two guys out the back. None of it really mattered because I was okay. And in true firefighter humor, one of my buddies says, "I'm glad you made it out, Savad, because if you didn't, I was going to eat your portion of lamb chops at dinner tonight." that was his way of saying, I love you. And I looked at him, I said, I love you too, buddy. A few hours later, we're back at the station. We're cleaned up and sitting around, and that same EMS crew showed up. They told us that that woman, she didn't make it. She had taken in too much smoke. That's the part of the job that sucks to me the most. I mean, I know we can't save everybody, but we try. It's never easy, and it never feels right to lose a human life when you've been called to rescue them. But it comes with the job. Things like that and other things that I've learned from those that came before me, I try to pass on to the younger firefighters on the job. See, I'm a sergeant now, and that's the family thing that we do. And I don't know how much longer I'll be a Detroit firefighter, but I'll tell you all what I tell them. When I retire, I only want to see fire on my stove, my outdoor grill, or the end of my cigar.
That was Sergeant Sivad Johnson. The Detroit Fire Department responds to approximately 103,000 emergency calls annually. Sergeant Johnson says that these days, fires are less frequent, and now 70% of the calls received are medical emergencies. All Detroit firefighters are trained medical first responders and are often called upon to handle patient care until an available emergency medical services unit can arrive. In 2019, Sergeant Johnson celebrates his 25th anniversary with the Detroit Fire Department. He says he can feel this chapter starting to close, and he's beginning to contemplate what the next might hold. He offered a couple of fire safety tips. He said you should look around your house and find those things that wouldn't or are not likely to happen and turn them into can't happens, like unplugging the iron even if it has an automatic off switch, or cleaning out the dryer lid trap before every use. You can see pictures of Sergeant Johnson and find out more about all the storytellers in this hour by visiting our website, themoth.org. Coming up, a mother risks it all to save the life of her child when the Moth Radio Hour continues.